facts around Southern Africa's cannabis industry. So in terms of the countries that play a leading role, I would say South Africa as well as Lesotho, and it depends on how you want to look at it. If you're looking at it in terms of size, including the informal market, you'd find that Southern Africa's cannabis industry is within the billions of rands or billions of dollars. However, if you're just looking at the medical cannabis sector or the medical cannabis space, what you find is that the market is still in its infancy, but with a lot of growth potential. And that growth potential is a function of uptake, both locally and internationally, and it will have a strong influence on how the market is going to grow going forward. Okay, so obviously there's been a strong legalization drive, but what has happened is that, I think there hasn't been like a lot of investment into understanding how cannabis is currently consumed within Southern Africa. Sadly, or I don't know, however you'd want to put it, a lot of the cannabis that is consumed locally is for recreational and for religious purposes, with only a very limited amount being used for medicinal purposes. So, however, when it comes to the legalization front, only South Africa is legalized for recreational use, but at a personal level, right? However, the other nations or the other Southern African nations have legalized cannabis for medicinal purposes, as in you can only grow medicinal cannabis and target the international space. This is going to be a challenge over the longer term, particularly if you want to sustain the industry. And how I say this is that if you want to have a strong and viable cannabis market, what you're supposed to have is a big enough local market that is able to sustain, which enables you then to also sell your products internationally. So I've mentioned initially that there's obviously an opportunity in the medicinal space because a lot of the international investors that are coming into Southern Africa at the moment are pushing or driving for sector development to supply medicinal cannabis into the international space. However, because a lot of the revenue is derived or obtained from recreational cannabis use, maybe there is an opportunity to probably legalize for recreational purposes, commercialize for recreational purposes. Obviously this has to be done with a lot of caution, to make sure that there's good industry regulation, no crimes are being committed through, the use and the trading of cannabis, and also probably there's like a standardized approach in terms of how you administer or sell cannabis for recreational purposes. I think the biggest challenge that you find with cannabis is that there's not enough local investment into the sector. So because there's not enough local investment into the sector, I tend to feel that we don't have a strong enough say in terms of how the sector is going to be developed and progressed. So if we had to find a way of probably investing into the sector locally, and this will start with research and development, for instance, clinical trials, to say is the efficacy of recreational cannabis as good or better than standard drugs that are out there at the moment. So once that research is done, we're now in a position to say actually let us ramp up or stick to what we've already been using, and then through the ramping up we're able to create front and backward integration opportunities for local market participants. So I'd say a big challenge is investment, and the fact that the legislation is not speaking to current consumption trends. That's number one. And then and the other thing that's also a problem is inclusion. We need to include those that are already cultivating cannabis to try and see, okay, how do we get those people involved in the formalized or the formal cannabis industry, because that isn't happening at the moment. Okay, so because of the hard economic lockdowns, trade has been low, so which has resulted in sales declining by 10. I would say it depends on how you estimate it, 10 or up to 30%, right? So this has obviously had an impact in terms of earnings, right? Probably the price has gone down because there's limited supply. A lot of the cannabis, particularly for recreational purposes, is not grown locally. It comes from Lesotho, it comes from Swaziland, it comes from Malawi, and because of that, I think because of the hard lockdown as well as the border closures, a lot of that product wasn't able to come into the country, and this just impacted trade in terms of what could be earned both legally and illegally. In addition to that, investment into the country for medicinal purposes has also come down. So there's been a reprioritization of investment where people are now going into basic commodities because of what happened with the COVID-19 pandemic. Local production of basic commodities became a very important thing. And because of that, a lot of the optimistic investors pulled out of initiatives such as, investing in cannabis, and that limited the amount of investment into the continent, and that is obviously going to have a short or medium-term impact on progression of the industry as we go forward. That's it from me. If you need more information on Southern Africa's cannabis industry, please take a look at our website or give us a call. Thanks.